So I've been looking forward to today's topic for a long time now. It's always exciting to get to tell you about how your data is valued and used, and just to let you as a volunteer community know how much we appreciate you. And anyway, today's Globe Observer Connect will be all about that, how your data is being used. And we are joined by a panel of four folks here. We have John McLaughlin, who is an education program manager with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which you may know as NOAA. He coordinates citizen science efforts across the agency, leads the Science on a Sphere program, and is in the process of creating partnerships for collaborative learning program, which sounds really exciting. Our next guest is Amy Chen. She is the outgoing Globe Program Manager at NASA headquarters, and she will be very, very missed. She has managed the Globe program for nearly 5 years now. And during the last year, she's been working with Brendan O'Connor, NOAA colleagues, and Synoptic Data on bridging Globe's meteorological observations with a wide range of people who can use them. She'll be leaving NASA at the end of March for personal reasons and will be replaced by Dr. John Sullivan, who will continue to lead Globe forward, embedding it in the NASA Earth Science Division's crowdsourcing portfolio. Our next guest is Brendan O'Connor, who is a support scientist with the Globe program in the Globe program office. And our last guest is Elizabeth Wilson, who is the Director of Weather Programs at Synoptic Data Public Benefit Corporation, where she oversees federal and international government programs. She has a bachelor's and master's degree in atmospheric science from North Carolina State University. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to John.
Well, thank you, Holly. Citizen science has a rich history within NOAA. Volunteer observations have helped inform our nation's prediction of and management of weather, oceans, and coast for over a century. This led to citizen science becoming one of 6 science and technology focus areas for our agency. I do have the pleasure to help coordinate and support efforts across NOAA, which notably includes our long-time involvement with the Globe program. None of the work we do would be possible without all of you. We greatly value our collaborative partnerships with Globe, and I want to personally thank all of you who collect and report observations. We want to maximize the use and impact of those data so that we can all better understand the world around us. Toward that end, the Meteorological Assimilation Data Ingest System, MADIS, provides the opportunity to share Globe data with the wider meteorological community. MADIS was jointly developed by NOAA's Office of Atmospheric Research and NOAA's National Weather Service to get data into the hands of universities, research institutions, federal and local government agencies, and the public. I look forward to learning more about that partnership with you today. Also, we have a new collaboration that was officially launched this month between NOAA's Center for Satellite Applications and Research, STAR, and the Globe program to help test run a new satellite project designed to detect blowing snow. This collaboration will actually be the topic of the next Globe Observer Connect next Thursday. I think Holly is putting the information into the chat, so you can learn more from a NOAA colleague about that exciting partnership. Thank you all for being here and for all that you do. And speaking of thanks, I want to offer my heartfelt personal thanks to Dr. Amy Chen for all she has done to lead the Globe program. And with that said, I will turn things over to Amy.
Thank you very much, John and Holly and Brendan and Elizabeth and everyone who have joined us today. I see about 30 people online, and that's really great to see. And I just want to echo and double down on and foot stomp on everything that John just said. You know, I think engaging in authentic and purposeful data collection with real world applications is one of the best way to learn and make meaningful contributions to the world. And Globe has always embraced this since the program's really early days. And I remember, back in the days, we have sent our data to the National Climatic Center, and state climatologists who have made great use of them for purposes such as validating extreme events like hurricanes and tropical storms and floods. And I am really glad that we have established this new bridge for sending GLOBE's weather-related observations to a really wide community that can make great use of them to support everything from research to informing farmers of planting conditions to guiding disaster management decisions. And this is all made possible very much thanks to Synoptic Data for ingesting the GLOBE observations into the larger MADIS repository, as John mentioned earlier. And so these hyper local observations have really never been more important because they help initialize numerical weather predictions, and they enable us to better capture regional variations. And the great thing is that because they're collected through this crowdsourced way by citizen scientists, these hyperlocal observations can really inform and make the forecast better for people in this hyperlocal way for the regional observers. So it's a great way that circle back around from people who make observations, learning by doing it through the process, and to make the forecast better to benefit the people who have been taking those observations. So I think it's really wonderful that way. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to today's presentation, and I want to really especially thank Brendan O'Connor, who has been who has done a lot of analysis to look through our observational patterns and our data volumes and where they're coming from, and also to thank Elizabeth here, who was willing and able to engage with us and for making this suggestion happen. And I just want to thank John McLaughlin, who just talked as well. He was aware of the early history when we used to have a bridge. It was MADIS that was broken and the circumstances surrounding it. And NOAA has been a really great colleague, and the support and been a great support and ally that GLOBE can always count on at every critical junction. So I just really want to thank him for that. And then I want to thank, of course, the community for making these observations. Without your observations, we can't be doing this work. So thanks everyone. Thanks to everyone who is participating in this webinar today, and also just everyone who is, in the 71 countries, and for making these observations and beyond. And I'm counting on this being more and more important going forward. And so thanks everyone, and I'll turn it back to Holly.
Thank you so much, Amy, and I'm going to hand it over to Brendan.
Super. Thanks, Holly and Amy and John. Yeah, we're really excited. Like Holly said, I'm very excited. It's been a while with this coming. We're sort of at the tail end of celebrating our 30th anniversary. We just surpassed 280 million data in our repository, or open access repository, which is just amazing. A huge thank you, obviously, to all the GLOBE community for your involvement in capturing all of those important surface observables. So for those that are familiar with the GLOBE program, you know that we have a range of tools that allow the GLOBE community and the wider scientific community to access those data that have been developed by the Data Information Systems team. We have our ADAT, the Advanced Data Access tool, which allows you to look at data in a tabulated format. We have our visualization tool, which allows you to sort of visualize it in a map format and graph and sort of look at neighboring stations and sites. And then we have our API, which is more geared towards the sort of programming community. But with all of those superb and excellent and well-used tools, we also recognized that we wanted to broaden the scope and sort of make it easier for the wider scientific community to avail of all of this data. And so we started looking at different networks that were available, and both Amy and I started reaching out and met with Elizabeth and her team from Synoptic Data, and came up with a pathway to develop this mechanism to support all the GLOBE data into several different networks. So the National Mesonet, Synoptic Data Viewer itself, and MADIS. And so for the bulk of today, we're just going to give a fairly brief presentation that Elizabeth and I are going to share. We're just going to walk you through Synoptic Data's role in how we got to here, a little bit of information about the National Mesonet itself, how you can access data in both MADIS and Synoptic Data. And if you're familiar with the ADAT and VIS, you'll see a lot of similarities with filters and choosing sites and that type of thing. And then we'll walk through the number of countries and the different types of variables that are already ingested in these networks, and then wrap up with some examples of our end users. Feel free to add any questions that you feel you need answered in the chat, and we'll get to those towards the end. We want to leave lots of time to provide a meaningful engagement with you all. So with that, I will share my screen, and Elizabeth, I'm going to hand over to you to kick us off with the presentation. Just confirm that you can see thumbs up for the present. Yep, I'm seeing Holly nod. Perfect.
Yes,
over to you, Elizabeth.
All right. Thank you, Brendan, Holly, Amy, John. Thank you, everyone, for being here. As Holly said, my name is Elizabeth Wilson, and I'm the Director of Weather Program. So I wanted to kind of talk about how Synoptic has been assisting and ensuring your observations are getting out to the broader community. So next slide, please. There we go. So I just wanted to do a quick introduction on who Synoptic Data is. We're fairly small. I like to say small but mighty, but many of you probably have maybe never heard of Synoptic Data, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about who we are. So we are an environmental data platform, an environmental data aggregator. Data is our lifeblood. Without data providers, without people like you, Synoptic doesn't exist. So our goal is to aggregate all kinds of environmental data into one platform. So users like you can come get the data they need. So researchers, so the federal government, so international governments, people can come to this one location to get weather and environmental data that they need for daily operations, for research, for really anything. So we currently have over 170,000 stations from around the world. That's over 150 countries. There's more than 300 different networks, from air quality to meteorology to oceanography to hydrology. So that is kind of the goal of who Synoptic is. Next slide. Just quickly, we are what is called in the States a public benefit corporation. I'm not sure how widely known that is outside of the United States, but really what it means is we're a for-profit company, but we are doing work for the public benefit, for the public good. So we take on projects, we do initiatives and programs that have an overall public benefit and a public good. So kind of the tagline for public benefit corporations is people over profit, because you're working to do these projects that bring that public benefit. Next slide, please. So just a little bit about how we work with NOAA. I think probably one of the reasons why Brendan and the GLOBE program came to us initially is we do work very closely with NOAA and the National Weather Service here in the US. Two of the main ways we do that is through something called the Commercial Data Program, the National Mesonet Program. That is a public-private academic partnership where they are licensing data from about 57 non-federal data partners in the United States. So that image over on the left is all the different types of data that are flowing into the National Mesonet Program that the Weather Service is then able to use in their forecasting and safety mission. So that's aircraft data, surface data, ocean data, again, all the different kind of data types that I addressed before. And it's filling those critical data gaps across the United States. And then we also work with NOAA on this contract vehicle called ProTech Weather 2.0. Again, just allows us to do more work with NOAA and the Weather Service. Next slide, please. All right, so I just wanted to give a little background on how you can get globe data in MADIS, and then I will talk about how you can access globe data in Synoptic. There are many ways you can get at globe data. Obviously, Brendan mentioned the platforms and tools that they have, so many different ways that you can get at globe data. With getting it through Synoptic, we have a lot of other additional data as well. So it kind of just depends on what you need and your use case. But we are currently providing a lot of different data to MADIS. So MADIS is the Meteorological Assimilation Data Ingest System. It is NOAA's main data repository. So it is providing public and government access to federal and non-federal data sets. So currently, Synoptic is delivering more than 240 networks to MADIS. So that is both as a backup, but also as the primary provider. So for the Globe network, we are the primary provider into MADIS. As was mentioned earlier, it was going to MADIS. Something happened, it stopped. So we have been sending that to MADIS as of, I believe, last year is when we officially got it back up and running. So when you go to MADIS, the network name in MADIS is NGLO. This link in here, it's just a list of the stations that are in MADIS. So this is not the actual API or how you access data, but just showing all the different data types that are in MADIS and just showing that the Globe network is indeed a network that we are providing to MADIS and is available. A little bit about where MADIS is now, kind of the future of MADIS. MADIS has been around for a while. It is quite old, and as of 2023, it was made at kind of, Weather Service leadership levels that the code and kind of system is frozen to direct ingest of new data types and new networks. So that doesn't mean that new data can't get in there, but in the past, you could go direct to MADIS support, they would ingest it, all of that. Now, that is coming through Synoptic. So Synoptic is what is called the MADIS Tier 3 contractor. There's Tier 1 and Tier 2 that deals with 24/7 support and things. Tier 3 is someone who brings in new networks, does metadata updates, really makes sure the data that needs to get into MADIS gets into MADIS. So Synoptic has taken on that role as of last year, I believe. So that is kind of, why we were working with the GLOBE program. We are the conduit for new data types into MADIS. The future of MADIS is unknown at this time. It's not going to turn off tomorrow or anything like that. It's going to be around. It's just they're going through iterations and discussions on what MADIS looks like in the future, given the current funding environment and, scientific priorities. So next slide. So then I want to talk about how you can also access GLOBE data in Synoptic. So the easiest and simplest way is likely the Synoptic Data Viewer. That is the link, viewer.synopticdata.com. It is an open, publicly accessible website. Anyone can go to it. You don't even have to create an account if you want to just view it anonymously. If you create an account, you get a couple of additional features like being able to save favorites and data settings if you want Fahrenheit or Celsius or different things like that. So I recommend creating an account, but you don't have to. So definitely check out that website. You'll be able to see all the other publicly available data in our system in addition to the GLOBE network. Currently, as of when I did this presentation, there were 266 active GLOBE stations, but we have more than 3,000 in the system. So some of them, aren't operating maybe currently, but we still have that archive in our system from when we started ingesting. There was currently 20 active variables, 21 in the system, and there was currently 35 countries with active data, but we have 80 countries in the system that had provided data at some point since we started doing the ingest. There are additional ways to access the data. So we do have a data download tool as well as an API. So those are the links there as well to learn a bit more about how to access data through both of them. But again, the viewer is probably the easiest, lowest barrier entry way to look at this network. Next slide. So just a couple ways to do it. So we didn't have enough time to do a live demo, but I did some screen shots of how you can access the data from the viewer. So when you go to the viewer, you'll see, a map
of the US or the globe, depending on where you are. If you click on the Explore tool in the top left, that'll be the first thing that pops up. And then you hit in the bottom left, it says, networks. You can search by network. So if you type in globe or type in NGLO, the network will pop up. You'll select it, and then it'll populate on the map. So the Explore tool is the real-time way to look at real-time environmental conditions for the stations. So you can click on a station, it'll pull up the most recent observation that the station has provided. It'll do a chart, a time series graph of the last, few days. You can change the parameters that you look at, so temperature, precip, dew point, whatever the station is measuring, you can change that on the Explorer tool. You go to the next slide, please. Another way to access data is the Metadata Viewer. So that is just the button below the Explorer tool. In this one, if you know the name of your station, which you should, or you know the ID of the station that you're interested in looking at, there is a station search box at the top left. You type in the name of the station or type in the ID of the station, it'll pull it up. When you click on the station, it'll pull up this bottom screenshot, which is kind of the metadata, but you can hit that tabular data view in the top right of that. And if you go to the next slide, I'll show you what that pulls up when you click on it. So it's a little hard to see, sorry, lots of numbers, but it'll pull up this table. So it'll pull up a summary weather data, so like max mins, things like that. And then it'll pull up all of the station data for the past, you can go up to 7 days on the viewer. So it'll pull up data up to the last 7 days in tabular format. So however often that station is reporting, the data will be available on the viewer at that same frequency. Next slide, please. And then lastly, we have the ability to graph. So that is one step below the metadata viewer on the Synoptic Viewer page. So you can create graphs of a single station, multiple variables, or you can create a graph of multiple stations, single variable. So again, you can look at your globe station, what are the patterns and trends over the last few days. You can compare globe stations that are near each other. You can compare a globe station with a station from another network. It's kind of up to you of how you want to use it and use the viewer, but it's very powerful, lots of different ways that you can view the data. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Brendan because I think he has a couple things to discuss before we move to questions.
Super, thanks, Elizabeth. Yeah, there's a couple of terms that we're interchanging here, like variable versus protocol, but it means the same thing, and station versus site. So there's just little nuances, but they all have the exact same meaning. So yeah, I wanted to show the contributions from the globe community that Elizabeth mentioned. So what you're seeing here is a map of all of the different countries that have submitted data through the whole QA/QC process. As Elizabeth mentioned, there's 35 active and 45 inactive. So the map itself in the navy are those countries that are actively contributing right now. The light blue are inactive, which just means that they haven't submitted data in the last 30 days. And obviously with lots of different competing needs in life, that's not all that unexpected. And then the light gray are those countries that have not yet submitted data. And on the left-hand side, you're just seeing an alphabetical list of each of the countries that have submitted data. In terms of the range of variables, there are 13 sort of hardcore protocol variables that have been derived from globe protocols, and those are the first 13 in the list there. In addition to that, there are then 2 derived products. So dew point, for example, is a product that through calculations is derived from temperature and relative humidity. It's a really useful variable that's shared with the meteorological community. So it's great that that computation is done within the system. And then the 5 variables on the right-hand side are from automated weather stations, which are also part of the globe network. So something like temperature, the very first in the graph, there are over 500 stations across the world within the globe network that are contributing data. Total cloud coverage, you can see, is a pretty big peak with over 2,600 individual stations, so quite a lot there. The numbers that have just appeared on the top of the graphs are the number of countries that are contributing. So it's you can kind of see the higher number of countries are leading to higher number of observables, but it varies a lot. And we issued a press release, I think it was back in July of 2025, and at that point we were reporting about 1,100 stations, sites across the globe, and that has now increased threefold. So in 8 months, we've tripled the number of stations that are submitting data through Synoptic Data, and this is one of the many networks that the meteorological community can avail of. We have a huge number of examples of end users, and Elizabeth mentioned a number of the different data streams that are available to the wider meteorological community. So whether you're a decision maker in a local community or public safety manager, or you work for federal government programs or international programs, all of these different data streams serve to sort of facilitate you being able to answer questions. And I kind of look at this like a tributary. So you submitting your individual data from a weather station or from your local school or from a business, you're kind of like a small tributary that's contributing into a river. And then we get all this satellite data coming in with a massive influx, like a big giant lake flowing in, and it eventually gets to the ocean. We've lots and lots of these contributions from the broad community. And then you have scientists out in this big ocean who can then select what data they want to use for their specific needs. So it's sort of like we are now part of just a bigger and broader data stream. So for some of the examples, Elizabeth mentioned the National Weather Service. They use, in a large number of their forecast offices, they use MADIS surface observable data, as well as a lot of these other streams. So data from the ships, the buoys, from airplanes, from weather balloons, and obviously from satellites. And that allows them to enhance severe weather monitoring and allows them to provide for better and more informed lead-in times when communicating with the wider community. So whether that is tornado activity or hurricanes, tropical cyclones, all of this information is providing them with more informed capacity. There are hundreds of universities internationally that use data from both Synoptic Data, MADIS, and from the Mesonet system. And this example in the middle is from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, who use 3 main variables: the soil moisture, temperature, and precipitation in drought forecasting. And that allows the agricultural community to identify, when conditions are perfect for planting, what sort of irrigation needs are needed. The third example relates to the numerical weather prediction tools, and I think Amy mentioned a little about this at the start. These are different gridded systems that just provide information on forecasting, and Globe is uniquely positioned in many ways because we can create these hyper-localized data sources that allow for these models to increase in terms of their accuracy and potentially reduce uncertainty. We're obviously very conscious that the Globe program is a large international program in 127 countries, and there are both lots of examples within the US, but also lots of examples across the international arena. The strapline for the National Weather Service here in the United States is to have a weather-ready nation, but there is an international weather-ready nation program as well, and there's a huge collaboration with the National Weather Service to sort of position other communities across the world to be in a sort of informed position when it comes to making decisions in response to either weather or water or climatic events. And you can see on the map some of the countries that are involved include Guatemala and El Salvador, Costa Rica, South Africa, Indonesia. So these are just sort of the very tip of the iceberg examples in terms of how the meteorological community use these complex data streams. And with the Globe program now feeding into that, we're sort of just doing our little bit to provide more information and allow for more informed decisions and making it easier for the broader scientific community to gain access to the data. So with that, we wanted to provide lots of opportunity for questions. Sharing here both Elizabeth and my contact details. We do have a PDF with all of the URLs that we used during the presentation, and Holly will share that out when she sends out the recording. So you will have access. You see some of them listed here as well. So with that, Elizabeth, did I miss anything, or is there anything you would like to add before I close the presentation?
No, I think you're good. Just thank you to everyone for listening.
Super. Yeah, with that, happy to take any questions or invite Amy or John if you have any additional thoughts that you'd like to share. But a big thank you to everybody for giving up your time to join us today, and I hope you got a little bit more information in terms of just the benefits that the GLOBE program can now demonstrate in terms of the wider applicability to the scientific community.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to go explore the data viewer and see my data next to data that comes from other types of systems, not just GLOBE, which is, I think, a really exciting thing.
Exactly. Yeah, it is. I think it's very exciting. I think it broadens just our little bit and important contribution to that broader and wider conversation, which is really good.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is 12:30. I'll flag. We usually wrap up about now. However, I'm happy to stay on for as long as we need to have opportunities for questions. There's one in the chat here. Ana Preto asks, she has been contributing atmospheric data from Argentina to GLOBE, but Argentina appears to be inactive on the map that you shared. Could you comment on how countries were classified as active versus inactive, and maybe why that might have shown up that way?
Yeah, certainly. So the map that I showed, which I can share again, it showed data that has been submitted from the GLOBE community that has passed through these various quality assurance and quality control systems. So it's not necessarily that Argentina is obviously inactive. They're an active country in terms of data submissions, but they may not either have submitted within the last 30 days, which would classify them as inactive, or it's possible that they just didn't pass through one of the quality assurance or quality control metrics that are used to allow for this data to go through. And that's the other possible thing I didn't oversell enough, is that the scientific community can now go to these data sources and they know that they meet specific metrics that are available through both Synoptic Data and MADIS website in terms of the various levels of quality assurance checks that they go through. They know, some of them echo what we do within the GLOBE program. So I know one of their first quality assurance checks is just to check the validity. So something like relative humidity, it should be between 0 and 100%. And if you're reporting a value that's 110, then obviously you're not passing through that QA/QC trigger. And then they get more complex in terms of the checks as they step down to level 2 and level 3. So those may be some of the reasons why you're not seeing it on the map.
Thank you. So Marilea is asking, is there a way to see cloud reports in the viewer? She says she is not seeing it in the variable list.
Yes, so as I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, in our system, we have over 160 variables. So we started with kind of the core basic ones on our viewer, and we have been steadily adding them over the last few months. So since you have requested it, I can bring it back to the team. We have a running list of priorities, which ones we need to add next. So it's something that can be added, but that's the reason it's not on there right now, is we had to start with a smaller list. So
yeah, I would just add that we've had we've been learning as we go through this process and recognizing some of the technical differences between our two systems, and that's just been a little bit of a learning curve that we're continuing to grow and learn from, and hopefully expand both in the number of stations and the number of variables that are submitted.
Any other questions?
I don't have a question, Holly, but I just have a comment. I really like the analogy that Brendan gave about how each of us have our little tributary and we contribute to the mainstream river, bank trunk. And, I think that's a really great way of thinking about this, just like we all do our little part to make this world a better place. And in this case, we do our little part and it gets fed into this huge repository that's retrieved for, purposes that really have direct societal impact at different levels, all the way from weather forecasts and beyond. So I just want to say thank you again to everyone who do contribute data. I think that's a great way of thinking about it.
Thank you.
Normally I don't come up with a good analogy. It's usually Amy that comes up with the great analogies, and I'm like, oh, that was a really good demonstration. But somehow my brain kicked in and kind of worked.
I'm glad it did. Thank you. So a question, from Paul. Might GLOBE be interested in receiving volumetric wind speed, wind direction, horizontal and vertical wind shear, and speed shear data in the lowest 6 to 8 kilometers of the boundary layer derived from scanning Doppler LiDAR installed at UAS testbeds throughout the US?
Amy, do you want to take that one, or?
Sure. So, I think I will just mention very briefly that we're in the process of right now. So the short answer is yes, although the time frame to which we may get to it, it's a little bit uncertain right now, and for the following reason. So we have we are rethinking GLOBE's priority right now, and in terms of our observables. So there's no change that will be happening in the short term. So in the next, I would say, couple of months. But in the process, we have a team who is actively looking at GLOBE observables and mapping them onto ESD's satellite prime missions and their science and application requirements. And we have an overarching and I would say a very urgent goal right now to do that mapping exercise and to figure out which of the observables perhaps need some modification to help address these support some of the calibration validation needs and to further along our research agenda. And I would think that this both has importance for NASA Earth Science Division, but I can also see in the ways that we kind of describing here to NOAA's objective as well for operational weather service. So that's our primary goal right now, and that's a big chunk of work that you'll hear more about from my colleague John Sullivan and NASA headquarters and others from the GLOBE program upcoming. So we do have interest in bringing on additional observables, but we have this mapping onto the ESD satellite mission as our prime goals right now that we have some urgency that we need to do. So that's kind of that's a long-ish answer to that question.
John, Elizabeth, I wonder if one of you might have recommendations for places that data might be shared within your organizations.
Yeah, so hi, Paul. We've actually been discussing over email as well. So I think there's definitely a place for that data, even just outside of the GLOBE program, so the Mesonet program, or just in Synoptic's kind of data ecosystem. So Paul, we can touch base offline as well, but GLOBE is a great landing spot for it too, if it makes sense. So.
All right.
Sounds like some very interesting data. I was just going to say, I'm not sure exactly which NOAA project, if any, might be able to accept it, but it certainly sounds like an interesting new data source moving forward.
Thank you. Does GLOBE use lightning data, and if so, how?
I'm not aware of us having any history of using lightning data, but echoing what Amy just walked through in terms of matching or, potential changes to protocols or adopting new observables to match those missions, then, I wouldn't say it's out of the realms of possibility. That might be something that we could look at moving forward. Elizabeth, I don't know if you and Synoptic have any database for lightning.
I think we do have some like lightning counts and different things. So I think lightning is a parameter and a variable that we can ingest, but we don't have to like AEM or Earth Networks has their big, and like Vaisala has their lightning database. We don't have that kind of data in our system, but we do have lightning in some capacity. So.
Okay. Yeah, I think you just highlighted, all of these different variables that are available out there that have relevance to different parts of the broader meteorological society. Like, it's hard to get one single database that captures them all.
Yes.
We've just touched on two examples where we currently don't have them, but we do have the potential to adopt them moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
So next question is, how important are aerosol measurements, and which satellite overpass should we try to align those measurements with to get the best results? GPSS-1, NOAA 20, PACE.
I can take a shot.
Okay.
So yeah, so I just mentioned that we are, we really have our primary goals right now in mapping out GLOBE's observables to address NASA Earth Science Division's prime satellite mission goals. And there are actually 2 observables that are at the cusp of being released and to the community as upcoming, and stay tuned for that. And one of them is about atmospheric particulates. We had Kevin Sikowski and his colleagues, including Pawan Dasgupta and Kristen O'Korn in NASA. They organized a workshop back in May of last calendar year, 2025, to map out how and if we bring on these low-cost atmospheric particulate sensors, how do we go about harmonizing their data rigorously in order to address mission goals from missions such as Tempo. So that work is ongoing, and you will see communications from that very shortly. It will be one of observables that we will actively turn to the GLOBE community to ask for your help and your observation input. So that's one example that has direct mission ties that you'll hear about down the road very soon, I'm hoping. And the other one, I'm going to hold it back until we're ready, but it's but there's another one will be released soon, and then I think you will keep seeing these things rolling out to meet those goals I just mentioned before.
Stay tuned. It sounds very exciting. All right. Well, I am not seeing any other questions. Do any of you have any last things to add?
Just a repeated thank you to everybody for joining, and for Elizabeth for taking time out and sharing her inputs from Synoptic Data, and a huge big thank you to Amy, who, as you heard at the start, is departing for greener pastures. You will be much missed, as you can just see from her fluidity of explaining fairly complex topics in a very understandable, manageable way, a skill I've yet to learn. So you will be very much missed, Amy.
Thank you for saying that. And I want to thank our GLOBE federal sponsors again, and John McLaughlin is represented here. I want to thank the GLOBE infrastructure team who make it all possible. And Elizabeth, thank you again for your willingness to collaborate with us on this. We are, very happy that this panned out this way. And frankly, having this webinar, and thank you, Holly, for pulling it all together. I think it offers the community, we put in our little bit, and then we all get much more out of it collectively. So that's really important to me. And I have a super capable team. Many of them are here, Brendan included, that will keep charting this forward. And I think together with our federal co-sponsor support, you know, I'm going to watch on the sidelines to cheer you all on. And like I always try to say, I left nothing on the table, and there's nothing I know that this team doesn't. So I'm very happy that way. And thank you again to the community for hanging on with us. And you know, and and for all your contributions and observations that you make. And then I am really grateful for the educators and who's holding their hands of their students, and helping make your community at regional level better, and then, you know, help contribute data in this important way. So thank you, everyone. Yeah.
Thank you, Amy. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was going to say if John has any last words.
I was actually just putting a clap emoji along to agree exactly what you just said, Amy. And so thank you to everyone for organizing. I learned from this webinar, which I always appreciate. So this was great. And thank you all for all the interesting ideas of measurements to add. There's so much excitement that people are asking, how can we get additional data in here? So to me, that shows this data pipeline is useful and exciting, that people want to just add more to it. So that's a sign of a really successful partnership. So everybody here on the call, thank you for all you did to set it up. Brendan, thank you so much for organizing. And Amy, Globe is not going to be the same without you. Your impact on this program was incredibly huge. You are so thoughtful and caring and collaborative in everything you do. And we'll just try to carry on that legacy, but your legacy will live with Globe. And thank you for all you've done.
Yeah, and like I like to say, I get the last word here, and that's only standing on shoulders of the giants. And so then I will part there, and that includes you all. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy. We will miss you, and we wish you all the best. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We have a special Globe Observer Connect next Thursday, as John said at the beginning. It is about the Blowing Snow project that we ran from December through March of this year. And we will be hearing from a research meteorologist from NOAA about the data and how he is using it to help develop or improve on a satellite data product. So I'm excited about that Blowing Snow project. I'm excited to hear about how it went. I will put in the chat one more time the link to register for it. So I hope we'll see you all back here next Thursday at noon Eastern Time. I believe that is 1600 UTC for our international community. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.